In experiment 19, we will learn about reactivities of alkyl halides. The goal is to learn the basic structure of alkyl halides, also known as haloalkanes, and their reaction mechanisms. So alkyl halides can be found in nature as well. If you look at T4 thyroid hormone, you will see the hydrocarbon here. Carbon is attached to iodine, right? So this is a haloalkanes. T4 thyroid hormone is an alkyl halide. If you look at mussel or oyster, they contain some toxin and is a complex structure, but it is a alkyl halide as well. It has carbon center with a chlorine halogen atom attached to it, right? So these are all naturally occurring alkyl halide, okay? So we're going to learn more about alkyl halides. So make sure to read up on experiment 19, the lab procedure itself. It is a required readings, and technique number 5, which is heating and cooling methods. Okay. As mentioned earlier, alkyl halides are compounds with one or more hydrogen atoms in alkane have been replaced by halogen atoms. So if you look at a simple alkyl halide, which is a methyl halide right here, you will see that one of the hydrogen is replaced with um, halogen atom. So we put an X here because halogen atom can be fluorine, chlorine, bromine, or iodine, right? So you still have this CH3 group, right, methyl group here, but the X can be any of the halogen atoms bonded here. Okay, so but if you look at the structure carefully, so the CH3 group will be partially positive at one end, and the electron withdrawing groups is on the other end, so it is partially negative charge, right? We call this carbon halogen bond. Okay, the functional group present in an alkyl halide will be carbon halogen bond, and it is a polar bond. Okay, this is polar bond. I put a note here. Okay, so alkyl halide can have several structure. So if you look at this carbon center, is a primary carbon. We call it primary carbon because this carbon is attached to another carbon. We call it R substituent here, right? It's attached to another R group, which has a carbon as well. We call it primary alkyl halide or primary carbon. Okay, but it stays attached to halogen, so it's primary alkyl halide, right? If the alkyl halide is bonded to two other carbon, if you look at this carbon center here, it's attached to one R group and another R group, which has carbon on it, so we call it a secondary carbon, right? It's secondary alkyl halide, okay? If this carbon is bonded to three others carbons, so this R1, 2, and 3 right here, so then we call it a tertiary carbon or tertiary halide, right? So all these alkyl halides, since they have a polar bond, these substrate can undergo through substitution reaction or elimination reactions, depending on the conditions, right? Um, in this experiment, we will focus on substitution reaction. We call it nucleophilic substitution reaction. It has two mechanisms. It can go through either Sn1 mechanisms or Sn2 mechanisms. So we're going to look at these two reactions carefully in this lab, right? So let's look at Sn1 mechanism. In this example, we have terbutyl which is tertiary alkyl halide with silver nitrate and ethanol. Okay, so if you look at this carbon center, it's tertiary because it's connected to three other carbons, and the leaving group is bromine. Okay, so the reactivities is between the carbon center of alkyl halide group with a nucleophile of ethanol group here. So let's put a note here. So this carbon center is electrophile. Electrophile because it is a partially positive charge and it can accept electron pairs. Okay, so bromine is, remember, this is partially negative charge. Okay, so this carbon center is going to react with ethanol, which is what? Nucleophile, right? Nucleophile, Nu, and has a lone pair. Nucleophile can donate a pair of electrons to form a new covalent bond, right? So before it does that, the alkyl halide has to break a bond between this carbon and bromine. So it will break a bond to form carbocation. Carbocation because this carbon center has a positive charge. Okay, this stable carbocation is an intermediate and it is stable and it is a rate determination step. So we specifically call this tertiary carbocation because it's connected to three other carbons. So if you look at it carefully, this carbon center, okay, is connected to three other carbons. Okay, so this tertiary carbocation is stable and rate determination step. Okay, once this carbocation is exposed, now you can have nucleophile attacking this carbo C plus carbocation center to form protonated alcohol here. Okay, a new covalent bond is formed. Okay, it's protonated and is very acidic. That means it has a hanging proton right here. Okay, it's a protonated proton here, and we need to get rid of that. So you have conjugate base. The nitrate can pick up this proton to form a more stable alcohol, a new product, right? To form a product alcohol group here. So this will be a clear solution, right? It's an alcohol solution, so this is a clear solution. So this is a new covalent bond with a new product, right? Starting with alkyl halide, you end up with alcohol group here, okay? And you also get a silver bromide, which is a white precipitate. White precipitate is it comes from reaction between the leaving group bromine, right? Bromine react with the silver to form silver bromide, okay? And you also have some nitric acid here, right? So this is a mechanism of Sn1 reaction, okay? If you look at the energy diagram, okay, so when you break the bond between carbon and bromine, the energy rises and then it forms a local minimum here, right? So this is the rate determination step, and this is where carbocation is. Still, the energy is still higher than the product, the final product and the reactants, okay? And then it will slowly form, when it form a product, the energy fall and then you get a new alcohol species right here. Okay, so this is a signature, we call it two humps, right? One for each elementary step, and the intermediate carbocation is the rate determination step in a transition state, okay? And the nucleophile is not involved in the rate determination step. So nucleophile is not the deciding factor. It is the formation of carbocation. Okay, basically this reactivity is right here. Okay, so bear in mind that in Sn1 reaction, tertiary alkyl halide is more reactive compared to secondary or primary. Okay, primary alkyl halide it cannot go through Sn1 mechanism. Okay, we will look at that primary halide in our next slide. But for Sn1 mechanism, keep in mind tertiary alkyl halide is the most reactive. Okay. Another thing to consider is the type of leaving group present in alkyl halide. Okay, what type of leaving group is attached to this alkyl group right here? Okay, if you have like alkyl iodide, alkyl bromide, they are more reactive. Okay, it's most reactive compared to alkyl fluoride here or alkyl chloride here. Why is it more reactive? Uh, well, because it is a weaker base, right? Iodine is a weaker base compared to fluoride, fluorine here, fluorine atom here. So the weaker base doesn't like to doesn't like to share electrons with carbon, right? That means they like to leave and they like to be alone. So it is very reactive, okay? Weaker bonds, they will break off easily, okay? So this is the signature of Sn1 reaction, and let's look at Sn2 reaction in the next slide. In Sn2 mechanism, in this example, we have primary alkyl halide with a reaction with sodium iodide solution. So the electrophile, again, the carbon center is the electrophile, will react with the nucleophile iodide here. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so Sn2 mechanism is primary alkyl halide, and iodide will um, attack the carbon center, and you have a bond breaking between carbon and the bromine, right? So now you have bromine Br minus, okay, right here. Okay, so this formation of bond and breaking of bond, okay, right here, it happens the same time. Okay, so it's a concerted uh, a reaction, and there is only one step. Okay, that means there's no intermediate. Okay, there's no intermediate, there's no carbocation formation like the Sn1 mechanism. Okay, eventually this transition state is this molecule is unstable, right? So eventually the bromine will break to form a new alkyl halide right here. That's methyl iodide. Okay, but notice that proton right here. Okay, the reactant and the product, the configuration is inverted. So the proton is pushed to the from the left to the right because iodide is attacking from the back, right? It attack from the back right here. So it kind of pushed the proton to the hydrogen to the right. Okay, so we call this inverted configuration compared to the reacting species. Okay, inverted. Okay, so you have a new alkyl halide with sodium bromide as a white precipitate, white solid, right? Sodium. So the sodium, the bromine leaving group will react with the sodium to form a white precipitate. Okay. So if you look at the energy diagram right here, it's a exothermic reaction. So the energy rises and then eventually fall, right? But you notice there's only one hump, right? It is a one-step mechanism, formation of bond, breaking of bond. It occurs at the same time, okay? But bear in mind that you have an inverted configuration of product at the end as well. Okay, so if the Sn2 mechanism involve only in favorable in primary and secondary alkyl halide, okay, tertiary halide will not react, will not go through Sn2 mechanism because of steric hindrance, right? If you have too many carbon right here, it cannot go through Sn2 mechanism. Okay, Sn2 is mainly primary alkyl halide or methyl halide or secondary halide as well. Okay, um, again, the factors, another factor is the leaving group, right? Leaving group attached to the alkyl group right here. Depending on what type of leaving group you have, if you have iodide or bromine, it is most reactive compared to alkyl fluoride. Okay. So now that you have an understanding of Sn1 and Sn2 mechanism, we're going to test this out using different alkyl halides, right? So you're given 10 clean, dry test tubes along with 5 different alkyl halides. Okay, so to the first 5 test tubes, place 2 ml of sodium iodide in acetone solution. Okay, and then add 4 drops of appropriate halide. So it could be 1 chlorobutane or 1 bromobutane, okay, depending on how you label the test tube. Okay, so you notice it in here, for example, if you look at this picture, I have a test tube with filled with sodium iodide solution, and I add the halide, alkyl halide drop by drop. As you add the halide drop by drop, you observe the formation of white precipitate, right? And then record down the time when the white precipitate is formed at room temperature. Okay, remember these are all at room temperature reaction. So you record down the time. White precipitate means the reaction is taking place. Okay, if there is no white precipitate, then there's no reaction, right? There's no reaction at room temperature. So what you have to do is you take this test tube and put it in a hot water bath about 50 degrees Celsius. Okay, so that's about it's a warm bath, and record down the observation. Means you maybe at elevated temperature, the white precipitate will start to form slowly. Okay, and record down the time and the observation. okay, for all the alkyl halides that you tested, okay? So to the next 5 test tubes, place 2 ml of 1% silver nitrate in ethanol solution. Okay, then again, you're going to add 4 drops of appropriate halide. Okay, so silver nitrate solution, again, the reaction is at room temperature, so some of them will react. Some of the alkyl halide will react to form, give a final product, which is alcohol with white precipitate, right? White precipitate meaning the reaction is taking place. If there's no white precipitate, then place the test tube in a 100 degrees Celsius hot water bath, okay? Now be careful now that it is a boiling hot, okay? So don't get yourself burned, all right? So in a hot water bath, some of the alkyl halide will react with the silver nitrate to form a white precipitate, and record down the time when you see the precipitate or cloudiness, or maybe some will not precipitate at all. Some alkyl halide will not react with silver nitrate. Okay, so from these observations, then you should be able to determine which alkyl halides are most reactive or least reactive in Sn1 or Sn2 reaction. Okay, so I'll put a note here. So basically, in a sodium iodide in acetone solution, we are testing for Sn2, okay, Sn2 reaction, okay, and the silver nitrate is Sn1 mechanism, right? Sn1 reaction, okay, that is a 1% silver nitrate in ethanol solution, right? So think about whether these alkyl halides are reacting with these solution either in sodium iodide or silver nitrate, and think about why they are not reacting, and then think about the nature of the leaving group, okay? The leaving group attached to the alkyl halide, right? It can be right here, chloro is attached here, one is a bromo, okay? Okay, now is a terbutyl chloride, is a different alkyl group, okay? So be sure to take down the observations and think it through, okay? After recording down all the observation, sit down and think through whether the alkyl halides are going through Sn1 or Sn2 mechanism, okay?